Okay, let's talk about something that can absolutely drain your mental battery like nothing else, and that's overthinking. Now, the solution here isn't to try and think harder to solve it. It's actually to think, well, a lot smaller. And we're going to do that using this really cool framework called the 1% rule.
So let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that your brain feels the most exhausted at the end of a day, but then you stop and think about it for a second?
When you haven't really done anything. You know that feeling, right? That complete mental burnout from just replaying conversations over and over in your head, or trying to find every single tiny flaw in a plan, or just running these endless simulations of what if this happens. If that sounds familiar, trust me, you are not alone in this.
And look, this isn't some kind of character flaw. It's actually a cognitive pattern, and it's called the simulation trap. It's basically what happens when a really high-functioning analytical mind, like yours, gets stuck in its own loop. It's like having a supercomputer that's just analyzing and analyzing instead of actually doing anything.
So what is really going on inside our heads that causes this? Let's kind of peel back the layers on this very specific kind of exhaustion.
What's so fascinating is that this whole thing, it's not a bug. It's actually a feature of a really capable mind. You know, if you're good at abstract thinking, if you see patterns everywhere, your brain is literally wired to run these super complex what-if scenarios. It's trying to protect you from failure. The only downside is, constantly being on the lookout for every potential flaw it's absolutely exhausting.
And that protective instinct, well, it can actually create this neurological trap that feels almost impossible to get out of.
So think of it like this. Your mind can operate into two totally different modes. On one hand, you've got this analytical processing mode, where you're just lost, right? You're simulating the future, replaying the past. And then you've got action mode. That's all about being in the present, engaging with what's real, and just making tiny little bits of progress. The whole game here is to figure out how to shift from that first mode into the second.
Now here's the really wild part. Your brain can actually get addicted to the feeling of being productive without you ever doing a single thing. It's what you'd call a dopamine trap. See, just planning and simulating gives your brain this little hit of reward, a little dopamine kick, that feels way better than the discomfort of actually, starting the work. And that creates this powerful, super addictive loop of just doing nothing.
But there is a way to break this cycle. And it's an elegantly simple way to just short-circuit this whole process. It's all about the power of 1%.
Yep, it all comes down to this one little number. Not 100%, not even 10%. Just 1.
Now, this whole idea is rooted in this Japanese philosophy called Kaizen. It basically just means continuous, tiny improvement. We're talking about making progress that's so small, so non-threatening, that your brain doesn't even bother putting up a fight.
Okay, so here's how it actually works in your brain. When you set some massive, unrealistic goal, your brain kinda panics. It sees this huge gap between where you are and where you want to be, and it just shuts down. Boom. Overthinking loop begins. But when you introduce just one tiny 1% shift, the brain looks at it and goes, oh, yeah, I can do that. It accepts it, it engages, and all of a sudden, you're actually doing something sustainable instead of just thinking about it.
All right, so that's the theory, but how do we actually put this into practice? How do we go from just thinking to doing? Let's get into the actual toolkit.
Right, so how do you actually use this in your own life? Like right now, in the moment when your thoughts start to spin out of control.
Okay, the first tool is called metacognition. It sounds kind of fancy, but all it really means is thinking about your thoughts. So instead of just buying into all your anxieties as if they're 100% true, you just take a step back. First, you just observe the thought, no judgment. Then you challenge it. You ask, okay, what's the actual evidence for this? And then you can respond with some clarity instead of just reacting emotionally.
And this right here, this is the most important takeaway. All those anxious thoughts, those simulations, those worries, they're just data points. That's all they are. Your brain is just generating data. They are not directives. You do not have to follow those orders.
The second tool, it's all about building automaticity. See, overthinking thrives in the space where you have to make a decision. So you just remove the decision. You create a simple if-then plan. For example, if it's 8 a.m., then I'm going to do this one small task. That's it. The decision is gone. All that's left for you to do is execute the plan.
Now, when you start combining these tools, something really powerful starts to happen. You begin to find yourself on this
much quieter path, a path to some real mental peace. I mean, this is the huge shift we're talking about, right? It's moving away from just binging on your own thoughts and waiting around to feel ready, and moving towards a world where you're making these little micro bits of progress. You're relying on an automatic system, and you're finding this incredible power in just quiet, silent movement.
And really, that's the ultimate truth here. Real discipline, real mental peace, it's quiet. It doesn't need all the hype or the mental drama. It's just consistent, and it's built one tiny percent at a time.
So, I'll leave you with this one final question to think about. Forget about solving the whole big problem all at once. Just, what's 1% of progress, one tiny, almost insignificant step that you're going to make today?